Often while reading these stories, I've noticed that a common trend is they happen to the poster when they are very young. They say that the young are in tune with the paranormal, and that as we grow up, we lose this ability. In today's Reddit's true story, our poster has had continual encounters, even well into adulthood. Enjoy. The paranormal has been a major part of my life for as long as I can remember. My first experience happened when I was just a couple months old. Clearly, I don't remember it, but my dad does. And I had my first memorable experience when I was 6. Things seemed to follow me, or maybe I just ended up in the right place at the right time. Whatever the case, I've had more experiences in 26 years than most people will have in their lifetime. A large chunk of those experiences happened at my dad's house. It's a tiny 5-room bungalow built in the late 30s or early 40s. Metal siding, a small attic, and even a small root cellar with an eerie crawl space. It sits on about a half acre of land in a small town that, quite frankly, has a strong, foreboding vibe all of its own. Beyond the backyard is a small cornfield. Beyond that are woods, with a small swamp running through it. That swamp has some stories of its own from what I remember. My dad bought the place when I was 15. I wasn't as excited about moving out of a rusted ancient trailer as I should have been. Dad had spent 2 or 3 years looking for an actual house for us. We must have looked at 40 houses in that time. Some better and prettier than the bungalow. The first question he asked me the day we started moving our stuff was, "What do you think? Is this place haunted?" I said, "I don't know, something feels weird." I moved in with him full time when I was 18. Divorced parents, shared custody. That was when things started to get spooky. Number 1, it wasn't long after Dad bought the place that things started happening. Although he didn't tell me about them until I started experiencing them. I'd often smell a smoky, floral perfume moving through the house. Sometimes it just smelled like roses. It never stayed in one spot. Dad said he smelled it a lot. Sometimes it was so strong that it woke him up. Number 2, footsteps. Lots of them. Number 3, movement in the attic. There's only one way into the attic, a drop-down door above where my bed used to be. Some nights I'd hear walking, stomping, and furniture being dragged up there. However, there was no proper floor up there. If you've ever watched National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation and remember the attic scene, you'll know what I'm talking about. Number 4, I used to want to be a singer, so I'd spend a lot of my time alone, which was most of the time, trying to build up my confidence and train my voice by singing loudly. One day, I sang a song pretty damn well, and when I finished, I heard hearty clapping coming from my bedroom. I just paused and said, "Thank you." Eventually, more advanced spooky things started happening. The first event I remember was in the middle of a beautiful, bright day. I was folding laundry in my bedroom when I heard a large dog barking in the house. I went out to look, thinking one of my neighbour's pit bulls had gotten in. They had tried before because they think every house is theirs. Not logical now, but at the time, that was my only thought. When I got out there was no dog. Nothing was out of place except the dryer was open. I always closed it, because the open door blocked the back door too much. It was also hard to open and had to be slammed shut. The moment I saw the door was when the voices started. Male, female, young, old. They started as a collective whisper that came from every wall in the house and progressed to a mix of whispers, talking, yelling, screaming and crying. The only place it didn't come from was my room. as I found out from running there and curling into the fetal position on my bed. I could hear them from behind my door, and soon it sounded like the voices had all congregated right there, trying to get me, only to be stopped by a flimsy accordion door. I put my hands over my ears and cried. Eventually, I started praying and reciting Psalm 23. I wasn't even that religious at the time. After reciting the psalm, the voices stopped, and I went calm immediately before falling asleep for an hour or so. After I woke up, I went to my friend's house down the road. Her mother hates me to this day and thinks I'm a demon-possessed heathen. She didn't think too highly of the story I had too. The second event involved the band. I've only seen it once. To get to the only bathroom, you have to go through my dad's bedroom. His bed is right beside the door, and he has under-the-knee storage drawers. One day, I walked in there and saw that one of the drawers was half open. He never kept the drawers open. As I walked past, a pale, grey, long, emaciated arm shot through the drawer and tried to grab me with spindly fingers. I instinctively jumped over it and went to the bathroom like I'd seen nothing. I figured it was better not to let whatever it was know that I was afraid. A couple of days later, I was telling my dad about the arm. I went into his room, which is next to the dining room, and tried to sort of recreate the event. Dad has a corner curio cabinet with a mirrored back in his room. I stood near the bed and looked over at the curio cabinet and saw a woman standing behind me. She was white, not Caucasian white, just pure snow white. Her skin, hair, eyes, even her dress, all one tone. Her hair was up in an antique bun style, and her dress looked to be a plain style dress from the late 1800s. While I tried not to let the hand even scare me, this woman drove me over the line. I screamed and started crying. This was my second or third time seeing a full body apparition, but it was the first time I'd ever been so frightened by one. Dad came in and obviously no one was there. Seeing her was what really started the worst of it. She would end up being a major player in all of this. Sometime between first meeting her and the most horrifying event involving her, I got a dog. Her name is Ferris, and she's my baby. She had a hard time adjusting, so I spent a lot of the time at night with her by my side, as I watched movies by myself. Dad worked long hours, and was often in bed by 8, so I always closed the French doors between the living room and the dining room to keep the noise down. A few days after adopting Ferris, I noticed she would look over the doors and growl. I ignored it for a week or so, chalked it up to her adjusting. Then one night I looked over and really wished I hadn't. On the other side of the doors were hands pressed firmly against the lower panes of glass, and figures low to the ground, moving in a slithery, almost slimy way. I couldn't make out the detail, but somehow the images of decomposing bodies writhing in pain on the floor came to mind. Instead of freaking out, I turned up the TV volume and watched my movie, all the while glancing over at the figures behind the door. They never left the entire time I was out there. I'd see them a few times afterwards, but they eventually went away. Ferris always let me know when they were there. They also never left handprints. Then there was Quasimodo. I don't know who or what he was, but I only had ever seen him in the reflection of a full wood and glass curio cabinet that my dad had sitting on top of the TV stand in the living room. It was mostly shadowy, although I could make out certain details, like the cut and colour of his hair, his hunched back and twisted arms. The first time I saw him, I looked over at the curio cabinet as I walked through the room and saw him walking closely behind me. It made me jump, but I didn't feel afraid like the white woman did. He didn't stick around long. I wish he could have taken that bitch's place. There was a time when our sump pump malfunctioned and the root cellar flooded. I was woken up by my dad yelling up from beneath the floors, "We got a fucking problem down here!" I was a bit pissed that he woke me up like that, as if he thought I had some broke appliance spidey sense that should have woken me up hours ago, just as the pump broke. I asked him later why he woke me up like that. He said, "Woke you up? I heard you walking around upstairs before I even said anything." We both got a chill from that one. Now for the long story. The day of absolute hell. I hadn't slept well that night. I woke up around 4 a.m. I know this because I could hear my dad out in the kitchen making coffee before he went to work. I'd been woken up to the feeling of someone's entire hand covering my face, using their fingertips to grip tight. I laid still for a while and hoped that it was a dream. Sleep paralysis maybe. But I could move, and when I looked up at the wall, I saw something so incredibly surreal. I used to have a beautiful handmade yarn shawl I got at a thrift store. I kept it hung up on my wall because it was so beautifully made that I consider it a work of art. Popping out of the neck hole of the shawl was a human head. It was pale grey, had dark, almost childlike features, but there was something so menacing about it. I stared at the head for a long time. It stared back at me, expressionless, and only blinked a couple of times. I eventually heard my dad leave, and I ran to turn the light on. I never broke eye contact with the head, and it never broke eye contact with me. Just like something out of a cheesy horror movie, the moment I turned the light on, the head was gone. I tried going back to sleep with the lights on, but couldn't. I sat out in the living room and watched TV until about 7 a.m. About that time, I felt like my heart was being crushed from within my chest. I saw a pale, transparent figure standing in front of me with its hand into my chest. I recognised it as the white woman and tried to get up. Somehow, she held me down. I reached for my phone to call my mum, but for some reason the call wouldn't go through. Text did though. I sent my mum a play-by-play of what was going on and told her how scared I was and that I thought the woman was trying to kill me. Of course she was. I used to have screenshots of the text I sent to my mum, but they became lost after an old phone I kept them on died. The white woman vanished just as I felt like I was going to pass out, maybe die. I got out of my chair and ran outside. One of my neighbours was out at her car about to go to work. She knew we believed the house was haunted, but never judged us for it. So I ran to her and told her what was going on. She tried to calm me down and told me everything would be okay. She said to call her if anything else happened, and she would pick me up and take me back to work with her. I went back inside and immediately regretted it. Walking past my dad's room gave me a terrible feeling. I peeked inside and saw the woman standing in the corner with her back towards me, her chest and shoulders heaving as if she was taking long, laboured but silent breaths. I didn't stick around. I grabbed my purse and keys and ran back outside just before my neighbour was about to go to work. I frantically told her what I saw. If there was any doubt in her mind, it was gone now. She saw how stressed and terrified I was. She walked over to look at the house and then turned back to look at me. Behind her, I saw the woman's face staring at me through the kitchen window. I shrieked and watched as the face quickly ducked back to my right. The direction she moved is illogical, since there is a cabinet, sink, and wall there. Sometimes I wonder if she left the house for a moment. My neighbour explained to her bosses and co-workers that I was with her because I had some home issues and needed to get out of there, I'm sure they all thought I was on drugs just by looking at me. I was a sleep-deprived mess, dressed in mismatched clothes and slippers. At one point, I tried sleeping on a couch in the lobby, but I couldn't sleep. I tried sleeping in the conference room. I couldn't sleep. I wandered the building for a while and eventually made my way to an unused cubicle across from my neighbours. The rest of the day is a blur. Things sort of calmed down after that. There were small experiences here and there, footsteps and smells. I moved out shortly after that for various reasons. I've only been back twice. Dad says those small things happen from time to time, but nothing big. My experiences in general have slowed down. Maybe it's because I'm not seeking anything out. Maybe it's a stress of the tangible world overshadowing anything that may try to show itself to me. Sometimes I miss it. Most of the time I look back at all the otherworldly bullshit I've seen and think, nah, I'm good. I have a lot more experiences outside of that house that I may write about. I don't know about any of you, but I think I'd rather stay at an abandoned mental asylum than stay in that house. What a rollercoaster of experiences. That has left me wanting more. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you all for listening. I do hope you found this story interesting. As always, a very special thank you to Purple Haze and Ghostface as they continue to support the channel. If you want to show your support, the best thing you can do is to like, share, and subscribe. Should you want to show further support, you can do so by joining the Patreon, grabbing some merch from Teespring, or even submitting stories and videos you'd like covered in the subreddit. And remember, it's always scarier when it's real. Good night.